Welcome to the Lupit Live interviews. My name is Sergia Louise. Today we're going to be chatting to Simone from the Pole Physio out of Melbourne, Australia. Super excited to chat to her. They are a team of physios and professionals that focus on injury prevention, pole injury prevention, injury rehab, conditioning, flexibility, psychology, to keep polers and others on their feet and doing the things that they love. So super excited to have Simone today because I want to hear about their story. I want to hear about their team. I believe they offer all sorts of things from courses to coaching calls, to coaching, one-on-one coaching, and etc. So if you have any questions for Simone, then no. Some of the things that they've covered recently that I've seen come up on their feed is polling during pregnancy, ribs and rib sprains, anatomy of popular pole tricks. Hi, Simone. How are you?
Hi, good. Thanks yourself.
Yes, good. Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. Appreciate it. Early wake up time for you, so thank you.
No worries. It actually feels good to be up this early for me. I'm kind of hiding from the kiddo who's on the other side of the house, so we're good.
Love that. Love that.
Morning off, so I'm not complaining.
Very nice.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about your team. I want to hear like the story of how you guys all came together to make the pole physio happen.
Wow, there's a lot to it. So first of all, the pole physio started 4 years ago. So I'm the founder and owner. And I created the pole physio on a little bit of a whim, I guess. Pole physio was something that I never set out to create. It was one of those situations where it kind of created itself, and I was very much so drawn to it. And it was like one day I was like, okay, I'm starting a pole physio business. It was literally that. It was no business plan whatsoever, no desire for years to open up a pole specific physio clinic. There was just this overwhelming demand within the pole community that needed attention, and it was just me turning a blind eye for a while, going, no, 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 it's okay. I'll just be able to help them through, like, my usual means, and I just realized that I could help a certain amount of people face to face, but I could help a wider community and actually make a long lasting change and put a legacy out there if I've created something like the pole physio. And I think I was very much so influenced by people around me who were working, not physios, other people that were working in the online space, and I could just see the impacts that they were having. Um, they just had such a far reach, and I just went, right, no, this needs to change. And then COVID hit, and it was we all got forced online, and it was okay. Well, physio does work very well online, and it was that moment of, okay, this is what we're used to, and now the world has changed, and we can see, because we've challenged ourselves and pushed ourselves in a direction that we're not used to, that this works very well, and it's definitely a way to have far greater reach than what we previously had. So that's kind of how pole physio came about, and then each individual person that's a part of our team has their own like individual story about how they've kind of joined us along the way. So we're now up to 13 individuals a part of the pole physio team. We've got 4 online treating practitioners, including myself. Actually, no. Okay. No. Yeah, no, 4. That's all right. Let's say 4. Potentially 5 soon. We'll wait and see on that one.
Awesome.
And we have a number of collaborative physios that also help us put education out to the community. And we have some amazing admin staff. And then we've got our incredible talent like Mishka, who helps us put together a lot of the conditioning videos and anatomy series. So we're a big team now. So yeah, the physio psychologist and chiropractor. So we've got a wide range of people.
Wow, that's super wonderful. Yes, I
Mm.
relate to the whole seeing a need, then the pandemic happening.
Yeah,
All of a sudden
and
you're like, hey, this is what we're doing. All right.
it was life had a way of showing me what needed to be done, as opposed to me going, oh, this is like my dream to start this. It was just like, oh no, I really need to do this. This is like my calling. It was like life going, oh, you wanted to do something else? No, 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 you're not doing that. This is what you're doing. And it was like put there, and it was like, fully embraced it and went, yeah, this is absolutely what I'm doing, and I'm taking, the bull by its horns and going with it and trying to make a change. So yeah,
That
really love it being pole physio.
that is awesome. I love it. So you must have kind of worked into your physio training, and then did you find pole and just see everyone around you and say, "Well, I
Mm.
guess we need a little help here."
Pretty much. So it was me for a very long time, sort of turning a bit of a blind eye. I started pole when I was like 24 or 25 or something like that. So it would probably be coming up to my 10-year poleversary now, I think, or maybe it's 9-year poleversary. I'm not too sure. I'll have to check with my studio. But it was I was a newish physio. I'd been out for a few years when I started pole, and I was very much so in the AFL pathway, which was football in Australia. And so I was doing my postgraduate certificate. I was then undergoing my master's degree. So I had already had a bachelor of physio. I was studying a double master's. I had done a postgraduate. I was working with a whole bunch of local football teams. I was then put into the AFL to work with the women's team, and I was doing so much work, so much study, that I basically didn't have a moment free in my life to even just think about anything else. So when I had a moment to myself, it was pole, and that was my happy place, and it was like that was a me time. So the last thing I wanted to do was to like feel so stressed out and overwhelmed by all the other injuries that were happening around me. So it's very selfish of me, but when you, for anyone who's gone through high, a master's degree, let alone two, let alone any sort of further education, you know how consuming it can be. So I really was being selfish and kind of putting my blinkers on and just being like, this is me, this is my space, and this is, I don't want to think about other people getting injured. And it just took a toll because I could really see people around me suffering, and I couldn't really turn that blind eye anymore. A lot of the girls at my studio, where a family-only studio where I practice, and a lot of girls at that studio started to attend my private practice at the time, and so I suddenly had a diary full of pole dancers at my clinic, and it was like, okay, wow, this is a lot bigger than I realized as an issue. Not only is it, a couple of girls in my class, it's really like I couldn't fit the amount of people in that I needed to be treating. So it just kind of snowballed from there. So that was me treating private practice for a couple of years, pole dancers, and then COVID hit, like I said, and I finished my master's degree. I stopped working with AFL, and I was like, right, I need to do something about this. This is a big issue. So yeah.
That's such a great story. I love it that pole was your happy place. We're really trying to keep things on.
Keep,
Keep
and then it just couldn't.
them.
I realized it. Yeah, yeah, I realized I wasn't actually happy when I was seeing people suffering. Funny about that. It was like I could only do like, and if people didn't want to see me, that's fine. That was their choice. But when people were saying things in class, being like, "Oh no, I've been told to rest for 6 weeks and then have this injection and do this by my doctor," and I'm just there, kind of in the background, not saying anything, just internally cringing, going, that's not evidence-based medicine, that's inappropriate care, like all these red flags. And like that was the thing, they were seeing healthcare practitioners. A lot of them were being seen by people. It wasn't that the pole dancers were ignoring their pain. Their pain had been going on for so long. They were trying to help themselves. They were just not getting the care that they needed by the wider community. The community, the healthcare practitioners out there, didn't know how to treat pole dancing injuries, and they didn't know how to rehab them to the level that we require as high, extreme sport athletes, effectively, or artists. We work our bodies in a way that very few other sports do. Like, we have put such a high demand on our bodies. So yeah, a lot of healthcare practitioners out there have a very basic strength and conditioning understanding. So they were like, yes, rotator cuff injury, let's give you some TheraBand exercises through lots of 10. You should be good now. Or, oh, you have full range of motion of your shoulder. You shouldn't be in pain. You're right to keep going. Like, just these sort of like things that I kept on hearing from patients. I was like, you're right to keep going, but pain isn't normal. Let's try and actually work on that. So yeah, it was a lot.
So inspiring. I mean, how many times have polars walked into general practitioners and just felt like trying to explain their lives, and general practitioners, them just missing each other completely. So yeah, very typical, I feel.
I think it was really nice for the girls at the studio when they could just sit down in my office at the time and just be like, so I was doing this this, and I was transitioning to this, and this is when I felt my shoulder do this, and I was like, yep, yep, writing it all down, and then they would stop, and they'd be like, you just understood all that. And I was like, yeah, I did. They were just like, I don't have to
Yeah.
explain it. I don't have to show a video. Like,
Yeah.
you know exactly what I'm. Yeah, I'm like, I get you. It's fine. And it was just such a like moment of like, this is wonderful. So you can see like the instant relief on their face that they're like, you just get this. And I was like, yeah,
Yeah.
that's really nice.
Amount of time in the communication just so much like shorter. Um, yeah, having to tell our story a million times to a million different people and still having that blank stare kind of staring back at you like, I think that this should be fine.
Yeah.
To have
And
someone,
it
you know?
and it was not fine, was it? It's like, yeah, you'll be fine. Was not fine. It's like that burning room of flames around you.
Yeah,
It's fine.
everything's great.
It's great.
That's cool.
Yes.
So here's a big question.
Go for
So
it.
there's a lot of these, but for pole specific, what are and things are always changing. And you know, you being in the profession that you're in, you're always kind of at the top of hearing the new information that's coming down the line. What are some of the big misconceptions or you know, or things that we used to do one way and now things are changing, the education is changing, and the um, uh, what you're always hearing about like the icing thing that's changed to something else, and then the shoulder thing is changed to something else. So what are some of the big ones that are coming down the line right now?
Yeah. So we can get like we can be athlete slash fitness specific, or we can be pole specific. So
Who
if we're going
specific? Come on.
pole specific, okay. If we take pole back to like its origins, its roots, like we're talking, it's stripper roots. It was you were at the club as a dancer and you were doing what you wanted to do. You would throw yourself around the pole. You'd be like exploring new different pathways of movement. And some of the strippers back then would try to get upside down, and some of them they weren't. That was whatever their jam was. But there was a lot of people back then that were like, oh, what's this cool new move? And they would just try to invent stuff, and they would force their bodies into positions that they probably weren't ready for, and then they would get injured and not so great when you're trying to earn money based on the job that you're trying to do. These days, we know that we don't just throw ourselves into movements without looking at what our body's capacity is. So I think the big shift, at least what we've been pushing for in the last 4 or 5 years, is for people, for polers specifically, to understand that for everything that we do on the pole, we need to ideally be screening for those movements to try to make sure we care for our bodies. So there's some people who can get away with pushing themselves into different positions and their body has capacity for it and they don't break. But there's a whole bunch of people, well, like myself out there, that if you try to put me in a certain position, force myself, my body ain't going to tolerate that whatsoever. It's not going to be happy. I'm probably going to give up pole dancing. So probably back then it was a little bit more of a survival of the fittest. If you had it, you had it. And if you didn't, you probably just gave up and like dropped out of pole, or whatever you were doing at the time that was related to pole. So if you these days are trying to work on a move, for example, your beginners and intermediates that are working on their straddles and inverts, if they're trying to work on that but they don't have the strength and capacity, there's no point in them trying to throw themselves into a straddle all time and time again. They've got to break that down into the moves, and we do know this now. But that goes all the way through to our elite pole dancers. If you don't have the overhead shoulder range of motion for a bird of paradise, there's no way in hell you're going to get a bird of paradise. So I think we've seen that really shift from a pole specific point of view for the last 5 years. But Sergi, you've been pole dancing way longer than I have. So, I mean, you probably have your own experiences of that. Is that fair? Like what I've just said there, that, however long ago it was kind of like you just did the thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like you know, it was about, oh, okay, well, I'm not even gonna check to see how this is gonna go for me on the ground. I'm just gonna get up there and kind of see what how I can get in there and maybe move this and move that in a little bit. But I'll tell you, that catches up with you. I mean, that is not sustainable. That's what and even I came into pole when I was 28. I wasn't super young, and we were still just kind of like throwing ourselves into things like, I wonder if we can make this shape. I wonder if this can happen. Luckily, I have always been just generally a little bit conservative about pushing my body up on the pole, which is interesting. I do come from a background of dance, and I think that I never really got overconfident on the pole. It was always one of those things where it's like, no, I really actually belong on the ground. That's where I feel most comfortable in my movement patterns. So whenever I went up the pole, I had been dancing my whole life by the time I found pole. Whenever I went up the pole, I would never get too cocky, too proud up there. I was always kind of like, okay, well, I'm just going to follow my path of least resistance. There wasn't a lot for me. Maybe that was different for me, but I obviously was really lucky and I had a lot of range from the beginning because I was coming from dance, but I never joked around like I had the acrobatic or gymnastic background. That was never something that I was like, I'm an acrobatic gymnastic athlete. Like that was not set in my mind. So when I went up there, I was always like, how can I make this pretty? How can I make this easy and pretty? And the easiest and prettiest I can make it. You know what I mean?
I love that. I love that. I was going to say, I come from a very similar point of view to you, minus the dance background. I don't have that, but I'm just like, let me stay as close to the floor as I possibly can, and I'm afraid of heights, so I'm going to be as cautious as possible because I don't have a dance or a gymnastic background. So we are going to keep things as safe as we can because I have a life to live that
Yeah.
doesn't, in my ideal fantasy, involve injuries on a day-to-day basis. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I never really was. I never really, and maybe it was my own limiting beliefs, but I never came in being, saying like, I am super, super strong. For me, the flexibility, luckily at that time, 14, 15 years ago, was very accessible to me. And as I got older, that changes. If
It does.
you don't continue to condition it, right? But yeah, I knew I was never the strongest as in strong pole dancer and strong athlete up there. So for me, pole also was just kind of like this added bonus to my already like dance career that I had, basically retired from in my 20s, right? So this was just like, wow, fun. I get to keep
Yeah,
dancing somehow. Sounds great. You know what I mean? So
exactly.
I would never really pushed myself super, super hard. But I just ended up enjoying myself so much that I would just come back to it again and again. And before I knew it, I was kind of at a level that I was like, wow, I'm up here. That's weird. I'm kind of scared of heights, but here I am up here. But um, so I'm kind of lucky in that way that I didn't have any huge, big, major injuries along my journey, just because I think I'm always a little bit on conservative, scared side, and really nerdy into the how can I take what I have and use
Mhm.
that to my advantage when it comes to the aesthetic, and how can I change this maybe easier move into something that has more expression and more aesthetic. So yeah, I just feel lucky. But yes, spot on what you said. We didn't get on the floor and say, I wonder if the shape I'm looking at, I wonder if I can actually do that even on the floor.
On the floor. Yeah, I was like, say, can you do I don't know, and before you try a spatchcock on the pole, can you do an oversplit pancake
I don't
first? No, no, no. Let's not worry about that. Let's just try a spatchcock. No.
it was answered for me on the bull when I said,
Yeah,
"Whoa, okay, well that's weird. I happen to have this particular flexibility for this particular move," and many other moves were like, "No, no, I'm not even gonna push that. I'm not gonna try that." But it would have been nice to say, "Oh, there's a move on the pole. Let's try something on the floor to make sure that I have, like you're saying,
yeah,
screening. Like that word. What a great word.
yeah.
Can we screen ourselves before we put ourselves in a situation where we might be pulling on ligaments and tendons in ways that are not a good idea with weight bearing while you're up in the air?
Yeah.
Yeah, let's not find it there.
No, exactly. Let's not find out when we're on the pole whether we can do the trick or not. Let's find out first off the pole whether we have the capacity to do the trick. And then if we have the capacity, then we can start thinking about taking it aerially. Like it's one thing to screen for like flexibility for tricks. Like some people just know they're like, okay, well this is a middle split trick. I have my middle splits. Great. This will be fine for me. This will be like in my wheelhouse. Amazing. Great. But then do you have the strength to be able to sustain the middle split position on the pole? So it's not just now the flexibility, but do you have the adductor strength to be able to sustain it? Do you have the core control? Do you have the pulling strength? Can you resist gravity? also while spinning at, however many times force around the pole if you're on a spinning pole. Like, it's, and we forget we are on a metal apparatus. We are on a very solid pole that is not an easy thing to actually hold on to. So I think then you add that level of difficulty. And, writing a publication last year, just documenting it, just writing it down, being like, well, we're spinning at 4G, with everything that's happening when we're upside down. It's what we do is actually wild when you think about it. If we're talking about tricks, obviously, floor work, it's great. We're a lot more stable, closer to the ground. We're still getting to some pretty amazing movements and movement patterns. But like, you think about some of the stuff we do aerially, like 3 or 4 meters off the ground, and we're defying gravity. So it's pretty
Yeah,
cool. Yeah.
exactly. And it's not like you can just go from, here to here when it comes to defying gravity. It's like there is, the way. There's so many, you got to scaffold it for yourself, or you're setting yourself up for not so fun injury. And then you don't get to do what you love,
No.
like really trying to be able to do what we love. So let's do it in a way that we can continue to do it.
Yeah. And I don't know about you, but I don't know anyone who's started becoming a pole dancer because they want to get into competitions. Like, I don't know anyone who's set out to be a pole dancer for that
Yeah.
reason. Everyone that I know has set out to start pole dancing because they want to explore this, this type of movement expression, really. Pole dancing, it's about, artistry for a lot of people. It's about strength for a lot of people and flexibility, but ultimately it comes down to being able to express yourself through an incredible form of dance and, I guess aerial gymnastics in some degree. And so very few people want to work on like being the best tricks that they can. Like, that's not usually the goal that people start with when they become a pole dancer. So I think in times of injury or in times of like trying to over push yourself, just bring yourself back to that main thought of, why did I become a pole dancer to start with? What was the joy that led me to this? I always remind myself of that, and then I always find myself in a dance class. I always find myself back on the ground.
Yeah, it's funny. It's a great point that you mentioned, because I do feel like way back, when I started, because there weren't a ton of performance and competitions even out there at the time. um, I think that we were coming into it in a different way. We were coming into it in this way that we didn't, yeah, we never had competition or performance or being the best or like in the world. Like when we were polling out of this like pure joy and community need for expression, and the camaraderie and the ability to continue moving as we were, as for me, as I was getting older. And it was interesting because I feel like then the generation directly after me, I spent a lot of time working on their mindset, because it was so much about, now they had seen all the competitions hit. Now they had seen all this stuff. So they were coming in very green and automatically going to those places and saying, that's what I want to do. And it was a lot of like, whoa, whoa, like even the best of the best, like that's not what we were looking towards, like let's bring it back down. And so it was really interesting. There was like a lot of like coaching people back into, okay, why are you doing this? And let's do this in a way that's sustainable. Sure, it's okay to have goals. It's okay to have aspirations. And let's put in like the true conscious time and care and fun that this makes this sustainable, so we don't see all these young super talented polars come in and like totally burn themselves out.
Yeah.
um yeah,
That's the biggest risk of injury right there, is people over pushing themselves, overtraining themselves. Like,
yeah,
they're just, and like you said, it's great to be goal focused. Like, people can have things that they want to work on, but sometimes I found with pole dancers, we are particularly a very stubborn bunch of people, and not in a bad way, sometimes in a great way. But often when we set our mind to things, we do it, but sometimes at the expense of our own health. So I think it's always good to have just that constant reality check within yourself to ask, is this still fun? Am I maybe burning the candle at two different ends here? Or, have I found the right balance in my life of training for my goals, training for pole, and also enjoying myself?
yeah,
Yeah.
so true. I know I always joke that like all the type A's, we all found our way to pole because it's quite difficult. So the ones who stick around are the ones that aren't afraid to like push it, you know,
Mm.
they're not, instead of, there's two sides to that coin, you know, like,
Yeah, that's when they end up in my virtual office effectively. That's when they're like, and then they come in. It's quite fascinating. I talk to physios of any other sport, or like, you know, being a physio for over 10 years now, and you know, I look at any other sport, and the rate of chronic injuries is much lower. Definitely other sports have people who have like 2 or 3 injuries that have been happening for many years. Guaranteed with a pole dancer, with their initial consultation, I'm pretty much seeing them for 3 injuries at least. And for many pole dancers, I will come in and there'll be a list of 10 or 12 past injuries that keep on popping up, not including the past injuries that have resolved. So yeah, it's quite different as an art form and sport compared to any other activity out there. Pole dancers do get quite highly injured, and there's a lot of data that backs it up that we are at one of the activities that are at high risk of injuries if we're not taking care of ourselves. Yeah.
yes, well, it's amazing that, you know, there's education, you know, everyone watching and coming across this with the replay and everything, just like remember that there are resources, you know, like use them, you know. So
What we're
tell
here
me,
for.
like, can you walk me through kind of what a one-on-one, like say you were doing like a one-on-one consultation with a pole dancer who has a couple injuries and you guys are remote, so it's like a Zoom meeting, like how, tell me how that goes, like what that intake happens, what they're leaving with, what you're giving them to go work on, you know. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So if someone joins, someone basically books in for a consult, we from get-go send them basically a new patient intake survey. So we get a whole bunch of information from them before we've ever met them. So we can get a really thorough history as to the individual, more than what you would ever be asked in any other physio or medical appointment usually. So we already have a really impressive foundation of knowledge of you as a person based on just that intake form. So we can start to see patterns already in terms of your behaviors, how you poll, what you do with your body, perhaps whether we're getting some hints that you might already be hypermobile. Like we can start flagging things already before we've even met you. So we take a fair bit of information that we utilize in your appointments. In terms of the actual appointment, it's the exact same as what it would be with seeing a physio face to face. So we do run a subjective assessment, so me asking questions and trying to find out a lot of information. In the physio world, we know that when it comes to injury assessment, the diagnosis of whatever injury is occurring, 80% of that diagnosis actually comes from the information that you tell me. So the tests that we do from an objective perspective, a lot of people kind of go, don't you need to touch me to like feel what's going wrong and so forth? Not really. 80% of that information has already come from what you've told me. So I should be able to, as a physiotherapist, and this is, you know, why we do masters and why we go and specialize in certain areas, but 80% of that information should already have come from what you've told me, and I should be able to really quite quickly pick up based on everything that you've said and my questioning and all the information you've already provided. From there, we go on and do an objective screening, which is to actually figure out you know, what from what you've said, here are the list of potential differential diagnoses. So maybe you've come in with forearm pain. In my head, I'm like, okay, it's most likely going to be this, but it could be, you know, number 2, 3, 4, 5. So I've got all these things that I've then got to make sure I'm not missing. So then my assessment is ruling out everything else that it's definitely not. So I'm making sure I'm not missing anything by doing a whole bunch of different tests with you, and I run through them in a non-hands-on way. So I basically modify any sort of face-to-face physio that I would have done previously with my online patients to make sure it's just as effective as an assessment tool to ensure that I'm getting the answers that I need in that moment. And then from there, we're able to confirm the diagnosis with the patient. From there, we go into the treatment phase of the session, which is, again, it's a sort of similar to seeing a face-to-face physio. The difference is between seeing a face-to-face physio and a telehealth physio is we don't have access to our hands. Now, as a face-to-face physio for many years, I became incredibly reliant on my hands because it was something that my patients really expected from me. They would come in, they'd pay for an appointment, they would come in with that expectation that I would put my hands on them to make them feel better.
Yeah.
And it was really fascinating after years and years of doing this. I got into the habit of putting my hands on them, even if I didn't feel like my hands-on treatment was actually going to help my patients, because they came in with this paying expectation that it would actually help them. So then I felt obliged to put my hands on them. And what was really fascinating was, certainly before I kind of gave up hands-on physio and became more of an online physio, I started noticing that the amount of time I would put my hands on patients was actually reducing in nature, because I started to recognize the importance of actually education, of discussion with my patient, but also most importantly, exercise and treatment strategies that were more self-empowering for my patient. So giving them the tools to be able to provide them with the pain relief they needed. So a lot of the tools that we do with our hands-on as physios, we can actually teach our patients to do very similar techniques to themselves. So, for example, if I'm treating your neck, I can actually show you as a patient a way to treat your neck that gives you the exact same pain relief as me just poking and pushing and massaging your neck. So I can provide you with the way to treat yourself for pain relief, and you have access to yourself 24 hours a day. So then you can do that exact same technique many times if I needed to do that. But if it was an issue that was with your neck that's been long-standing as a pole dancer, that's stemming because your shoulder perhaps is a little bit unstable, therefore your neck muscles are tensing up to protect you, so you've got this chronic neck pain, massage isn't going to really help you. It might give you some really temporary relief, but it's not going to address the underlying issue, which is the fact that your shoulder is causing pain through your neck from a lack of strength and stability. So in those situations, recognizing really early that the best thing we can do is actually address everything around it, fix this lack of stability or lack of underlying strength around that area, offload the neck, then getting that pain relief through a different mechanism, so strengthening. So ensuring that our patients have the tools that they need to be able to provide themselves with relief from like pain, but also to be able to strengthen or mobilize or improve their flexibility or use a whole bunch of different strategies to downregulate their nervous system, whatever it is that they need. So the key thing here is having not just a physio that understands pole, but a physio that is a expert physio in their own right, that has really good clinical reasoning and differential diagnostic skills. And I've always said this about my team, and I've always said this about physios just in the telehealth world. It's one thing to be a physiotherapist that's a pole dancer. It's another thing to be a pole physio. If you want to work in the pole physio world, for anyone who might be watching this, that's, you know, a physiotherapist that's interested, whatnot. If you want to be a physiotherapist working in the pole world, you need to be a really good generalist physio first before you think about becoming a pole physio, because your clinical reasoning and your differential diagnosis skills need to be elite. They really do. You need to have seen as much as you possibly can in the wider community to be able to work with such an incredible niche population that work in amazing ranges. And so you need to be exposed to so much to then actually be able to, with confidence, listen to what a patient's saying and be able to know exactly what's going on. And so we have this really good ability to recognize patterns with injuries when you have expert training to be able to go, yeah, okay, it's most likely this. I'm quite confident it's this, but let's rule everything else out. And to be able to do that on a telehealth session and to do it really effectively, that's a skill set that not many physios have. So I think I'm really proud of my team. I've got an incredible team of people that have just this amazing skill set and expertise and knowledge, obviously, in both physio and pole dancing that is just, you know, to be rivaled worldwide. And I'm very lucky, and hopefully we keep on collecting, if I can say that, collecting is a word, all these incredible individuals, because it's not an easy thing to be able to do, but our team does it very well. Sorry, I
Wow.
just nerded out a bit there. Just went on a little bit of tangent.
No, it's super inspiring and so important. I mean, you know, it's so nice to know that this is out there. Like this is a tool that can be used, and also so empowering. Like you're saying, I mean, to be able to do this, you know, online, speak to you, get new exercises moving forward, kind of pinpoint where maybe the weaknesses are coming from, so that you can continue on your own, empower yourself, and give yourself the strength and the flexibility you need to continue to work in the directions that you want to work in. So paired with that, let's say someone comes in, or do you have, I know you had been working on some kind of course stuff. How does your
Yeah.
how courses work if someone has like a general, if they've maybe met with you or they've been told or maybe they know, gosh, my weakness, my weakest link here is my shoulders. My weakest link here is my shoulder stability, or my
Yep.
weakest link here is my, wrist flexibility or whatever. Do you have certain resources, like kind of like prepackaged resources that you can give to people for that?
Yes, absolutely. So say someone came to us and they're like, I'm injured, then we would say, right, see our online physios for really specific tailored assessment, diagnosis, care. And a lot of the time, people don't realize that exercise can also provide you with immediate pain relief. I think I probably don't harp on about that enough. I've, talked before about teaching people how to massage themselves and do things in a different way to give themselves pain relief. There's so many times I've seen patients before where they're like, oh my God, my neck is so sore. I get them to do an exercise, and 5 reps later, they're like, oh my gosh, I finally got relief after 5 days of pain from just doing one exercise.
Wow.
So, just as a side note for that, with patients, or I guess patients, we'll call them that at this point. If they're not injured, I'll still call them patients because I think it's the respectful thing as a healthcare professional. Anyone who sees us that wants strengthening, they're like, I would like to build my capacity in my shoulders. I would like to be more flexible and a stronger polar, and I would like to be able to reduce my risk of injury. I know this is my current weak spot. Then we have released our Strong Shoulders training program earlier this year. So we have a 12-week kind of pre-packaged program, like you said. It is not tailored. It's not meant to be there to address injuries or specific concerns that are outside the scope of just strength and flexibility building. So it really is for people who are like, no, I need a generalist program here. So for anyone watching that's like, oh, I really want something, but I have an underlying past history of an injury and it flares up every now and again, that's going to need specific physio care. But if you are someone that's like, yeah, I had an injury years ago, it hasn't flared up, but I know that there's an ongoing weakness since, then that Strong Shoulders program is definitely suitable for you. So it's a 12-week self-guided program, but it's still also guided by our team. So we have a team member that's constantly touching base with the individual as they're running through the program. They're pretty much messaging a couple times a week, touching base and seeing how they're going, checking on weights, watching the program, seeing what's happening in terms of progression, flagging anything that they go, hey, we saw that you did this week. Can you talk us through what your plan is like in terms of exercise progression and weight progression? So we're talking people through the program the whole time, messaging going, I saw you jumped up weights quite considerably today. Let's chat through maybe going back a little bit. Or, hey, this is actually a little bit light for you. Maybe you need to increase weights next session and see how you go. So we're kind of poking and prodding people in the right direction with that. But it is a 12-week program that's got 3 sessions a week of off the pole strengthening. So it's all like home-based exercises. You do need some dumbbells. So you do need access to a range of weights and some minor equipment, but it's a great program. So we're May now. So this has been going on now for just over 2 months. So I think we're 10 weeks into the release of this program. So we have one person just about to complete their 11th week of the program. So they're almost finished, and their results from day one has been astronomical. We screen on day one where we look at individuals' flexibility and their strength. So we go through a range of different strength movements and flexibility movements, and then we retest them at week 4, week 8, and week 12, and then we compare their progress along the journey and see how they've gone with that. So yeah, we're definitely seeing some pretty awesome results and getting feedback from the participants along the way, because this is obviously still very early on for this particular release of the program. And what we'll find is as we go along over the years, we'll start changing this program and moving it to keep pushing people in the right direction with their shoulders. So we'll keep on building on it and making sure that everyone is working their shoulders really hard in a way to build the best strength and support they can and improve their flexibility. So yeah, again, a little bit of a tangent. I get nerding out when I start talking about physio stuff, but yeah, I'm really excited to release that. And the plan is hopefully to release other different versions of pre-packaged programs in the future, so everyone can stay tuned for some more programs hopefully as the year goes on. So not just the shoulders, we'll start looking at other different areas as well. Yeah.
Oh, that is so awesome. I love that. Congratulations out,
Thanks.
to get out those programs, and it's so wonderful because you can reach so many more people so immediately. Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
Absolutely. And we have, if I can interject as well again, sorry, we have our workshops as well, which we've run online for so many years, which is, so we've got our training programs, which are the 12-week programs, but we have these educational resources that have been so immensely popular within the pole and aerial community over the last few years. And we've run these sort of 8, 9 hour workshops, and we've had to limit them, unfortunately, to sort of a 6 month viewership because evidence changes and we're constantly wanting to make sure that people can stay updated. So we've finally come to this conclusion that we are, trying to produce these workshops in e-courses, and then we're updating the e-courses as they go. So we now have a Save Your Shoulders e-course available for people to learn with us. So if anyone who missed out on our Save Your Shoulders workshop in the last few years, we now have that available via e-course, and it's about 8, 9 hours worth of education that you get lifelong access to now, and we're constantly going to be updating that educational resource. And again, it's within our sort of our hopes over the next few years is that we'll release a few more educational courses that people can purchase once, and then they'll see the updates as they
Wow.
come through as we get new evidence that comes out within the physio community. So our goal is to try and try to remove as many barriers as possible to education, for the pole community, and trying to make it understandable for the pole community, because when we get information as physios, when we're reading research, it comes out in a certain way that sometimes isn't quite so applicable immediately to practice, and so we have to take that information and tweak it in a way that we can go, this is how we actually implement it into real life. And so putting that information out there for then the pole community to be able to work with. And so just trying to update that. Like, since the course has been released, there's already been 3 different research articles in the pole community that have come out. So I'm looking at those at the moment and trying to determine which ones I actually want to then provide information into the course. So I'll film some videos and throw that up onto the course in the next few weeks or so. So people are always going to get access to the most updated information in that.
Wow. And that's so wonderful. Yeah, because with your, with what you do, there's always that new evidence coming out and those new information coming out. And rather than just having, like you're saying, just having the kind of those recordings that would need to be updated, you're going to have that whole course, which is kind of like a living, breathing, evolving with it. And the great, like you're saying, the information comes to you guys to kind of get to regurgitate it, figure out what is applicable to what it is that we, that pullers do, and then kind of deliver it to us in a way that is tangible. And
Exactly.
I love that.
Yeah.
That is so.
Yeah. And we appreciate also that there's a lot of information there, and so some people go, what do you mean it's like a 7, 8, 9 hour course? And we're like, yeah, it's a lot of information. And so we've gone to the effort now of including a certificate with it as well. So for people who do the e-course, then they will get, once they've completed the course, they'll get issued with a pole physio certificate. So there's a lot of, I know, pole dancers who want to be employed as potentially pole instructors in the future, so they can utilize this as a part of their professional development for on their CV, or and show future employers that they're really interested in safety and learning and ongoing development to help themselves and their students. So I think it's a great resource for both students, but also potential instructors, future instructors, as well as current instructors.
Yeah, I was just going to mention, what if all of our teachers had that knowledge coming into, like, wow, would that be
That
cool?
would be my dream.
Be so epic, yeah, for instructors to really have that knowledge to because it's the thing about education, like I always tell people, is it's like when you learn something, when you're educated, like no one can take that away from you. It's like now know, now you can now do better. You know what I mean? No one can
Yeah,
take it away from you.
exactly. Once you've learned something, I mean, ideally you can't unlearn it. You then need to start actually adapting, and trying to changing your ways around what you've learned, and trying to implement it in practice. So as soon as you have a belief challenge, then it's time to actually go, okay, well, how do I act on this? And so a lot of pole dance instructors, I know that when we came about, we started our page when we started saying things like, stop pulling your shoulder blades back and down, you know that was a huge shock for the community. And we had at one point, I remember one particular post that had a lot of backlash, being like, what the hell do you mean? Like, actually, some people got quite feisty on it, and they were like, this is what we do. And
Wait,
I'm like, well, actually, no, this is not ideal in terms of biomechanics. There is actually a lot of research behind this, and there's actually a lot of understanding that we have that we can explain what's going on. And so it was really fascinating, where people were like, no, but this is what we've done, this is what we've always done. I'm like, yes, and this is why we have such a high risk and rate of injury within the pole community, particularly around shoulders, when people are over depressing their shoulder blades, and particularly when we're using certain cues. And so as instructors, if we can change that cueing to reflect something that's more appropriate, then we may actually see the rate of injuries reduce as a result. So I remember that conversation with certain instructors, and again, having that information out there in the community, it's only going to help the community for the better. So as soon as instructors were challenged with that belief system, a lot of them went, okay, well, this is new information, this is what I know, this is the new stuff, what do I do? And a lot of them went, right, well, this is clear cut, this is what we need to be doing. And they changed, they adopted and took on that information. And I know a lot of people did struggle initially, but we're slowly getting that information out there, I think.
yeah, well, that's why we need to turn to people towards you, like you, who that information or bringing it to the pole community, bringing it to the practitioner. So that's so good. This has been super awesome and love it. Love it. I mean, like, you are the nerdy in the way that I am nerdy with pole, and that everyone should be nerdy about what they do. So I just love that so much. Like, fans when someone's like, ooh, I can't do my job.
Oh, that's just me. That's literally how my friends would describe me, is a giant nerd, a physio nerd. So,
Good.
but like lovable, I hope.
That is the way you want your team. Like, that is it.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
totally it. So thank you so much. This has been so, so wonderful. Everyone, let everyone know where they can find you so that they can get to your resources and to you.
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously, if you've joined the live, then you'll see that our account is the pole.physio. Oh my gosh, I really forgot my own account for a second. The pole.physio. So that is our Instagram account. And it's pole.physio on Facebook, as well as we're on TikTok as well. So you can follow us on all those socials. If anyone is interested in the Save Your Shoulders e-course or the Strong Shoulders training program, they're accessible via our website, so www.thepolephysio.com. And for all pole dancers out there who are really interested in just working on their goals, we do have a really awesome goals planner. It's like a 20-something page booklet for memory that I worked really hard on. That's just a great resource. So you just sign up to our mailing list. We don't send out too much in terms of emails. What we tend to do when it comes to emails is just send out information about any workshops that we have coming up, or we send out free resources to our mailing list that are really helpful to boost the community. So yeah, by signing up to our mailing list, you'll get access to that free resource, which is pretty cool. And then we have the workshops that we pop up every now and again, which we've got one this Saturday. So I might actually just say that one if that's okay.
Yeah.
We've got, yeah, this is going to be a nice one. So it's called Get to the Point. So it's a foot and ankle workshop with one of our pole physios, Danny. And so Danny will be talking about ways to strengthen and improve control and mobility of the foot. So particularly trying to improve your ankle point. So if you're someone who struggles with like a sickle foot, or just you lack that range of motion, or you find, if you are doing competitions, that's one of the feedback that you constantly get is point your toes. Or if your instructor is piffing pens across the room at you in the pole class because they're like, point your toes, which have had that happen. So if you're in that situation, or you're looking back on your videos and you're like, I'm trying to point my toes, I think I'm pointing my toes, and then you're not, that's a nice workshop for you. But we're also in that workshop covering, so that's heels and barefoot. We are covering the anatomy of heels as well, very briefly. So we're actually talking a little bit about a stiletto or a boot, and why it's important to know the anatomy of a shoe, particularly relevant to our sport. And then we're also talking a little bit about foot control for edge work. So we've really seen this very cool exploration of this style of movement, certainly over the last 5 years, but the last 2 years, it's really kind of boomed. And there's going to be a lot of people that are wanting to play with, different types of movement. So deliberate sickles and wings, and, ankle rolls and circles, and, moving from different parts of the shoe. And so to do that, there's a lot of control that's required. Yeah, so we're trying to, avoid unwanted scrunching and weird things with the toes. So we're trying to work on improving a range of motion and control with that. So this workshop will really cover a lot in terms of foundations. We'll talk a little bit about anatomy at the start and a little bit of kind of basic biomechanics that you need to understand about the foot and ankle, but it's a very practical workshop. So we'll be going through a range of different strengthening techniques to improve your point, both in and out of heels, as well as then a whole bunch of different techniques to improve your control with edge work as well. So if you're interested in that, yeah, if anyone interested in that, head to our bio, link in bio, and then we've got the sign up there. So that's this Saturday, 25th of May, 9 a.m. Melbourne, Australian Eastern Standard Time, but it is recorded. So for anyone who is like, no, I'll be asleep, that's so fine, please sleep. Jump on, sign up now, and then you'll get access to the recording. We'll send it out later that day, and you'll have access to watch it for 6 months.
Wow, that is so fantastic and so well thought through. And I can literally see how in your mind, you know, like as you're explaining that, how you set out to deliver information on something, and then you really went through, okay, what are all the facets and how this is used? What are all the ways that pole dancers use this? And then really like listing out and really figuring out how we're going to deliver the information on each thing. I just love that. And yeah, I mean, gosh, with great range of motion comes great responsibility.
Responsibility.
So, right? All this edge work, you're like, okay, all right, so we're going to move into that huge range. Now, how can we make sure these don't turn into ankle sprains? How about that?
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, and that's the other thing. People who are unstable on their feet. So people who feel like, I just can't even walk in heels. Like this is good for you. If you're someone who's just constantly, this is a great workshop for you if you're an ankle sprainer. Or if you get like any pains and discomforts, it's going to be a nice one. Jacob's actually in the chat laughing at that, so that's good. Jacob, I don't know if you heard the with great range comes great responsibility. That was something that Jacob said recently, which is brilliant. So I love that.
Yes.
But yeah, no, this is going to be a really good workshop for many reasons. The thing that I do when I put together a workshop, or when any of our physios put together a workshop, we sit back because we're not just physios, we're pole dancers, and I go, what is it that I want to learn? Mm-hmm. And I know the information, but if I was not a physio, what is it that I would actually want someone to tell me? Yeah. And then that's how we come up with that outline and just go, right, what's the really cool stuff that we want to know? And yeah, that's how we create these ideas for the workshops. So we've been wanting to do a foot and ankle one for over a year, so I'm really happy it's coming to fruition. But yeah, if you're interested in it, make sure you sign up now, because it won't be around forever. It's not one of those things that you can go in 3 months and then sign up to. It's you have to sign up to it now if you're interested.
Got it. Love it. Well, I'm going to go sign up for it right now. Thank you so much. This has been awesome. I feel like I could chat to you about this kind of stuff forever. I love it. Everyone, please go check out Simone and her amazing team, and have a wonderful evening over there.
Thank you so much. You have a wonderful morning.
Thanks.
I might go to bed soon.
All right, so take care.
Thanks. See you, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.